warm welcome to this special episode of Public Sector Leadership Series. My name is Anoop Verma. For today's episode, we are having two special guests. Tuhin Sinha, author and political analyst, national spokesperson of BJP, and Kaviraj Singh, founder and CEO of Earthood Services Private Limited, a leading company in the area of carbon offsets audits. The topic of today's conversation is the book Climate Action India that Tuhin Sinha and Kaviraj Singh have co-authored. As the title indicates, the book is devoted to analyzing the global problem of climate change and the steps that the government of India is taking to mitigate climate change by cutting down greenhouse gas emissions. Prime Minister Modi has set before the nation the ambitious target of achieving net zero emissions by 2070. In the course of today's conversation, Tuhin Sinha and Kaviraj Singh will provide the analysis of Modi government's climate change policies and initiatives, which they have basically covered in their book. Welcome, Mr. Tuhin and Mr. Kaviraj.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
My first question is to Tuhin Sinha. From a social and political angle, how do you see the theme of the book, Climate Action India?
Well, the need for climate action is extremely important every which way. And this has been highlighted time and again by Prime Minister Modi. So in 2021 at COP26 in Glasgow, he surprised the world when he gave a very ambitious net carbon emission zero target for India by 2070. And obviously, there are 5 components of it, which are known as the Panchatattva plan, that India should achieve 500 gigawatt of non-fossil energy by 2030, that our carbon emissions should go down by 45%. India to reduce total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons. So these are very important projections, but there are larger issues when it comes to climate action. For example, the big countries, the US, the China, which are the prime pollutants when it comes to emissions, are they at par with the third world countries in taking exemplary measures to mitigate climate change? Number 2, to incentivize climate action among the common public, to make them a part of this journey, I think somewhere we need to incentivize it and create business opportunities around it. Are we doing enough for that? Electromobility, the shift to hydrogen energy. All of these aspects are adequately covered in the book, giving a larger perspective of India's journey towards the net zero mission. Are we on track? Do we need to do more? These are the prime questions which are asked time and again in the book. And obviously, Kaviraj ji, being an expert in the carbon credit offset space, brings his own perspective in this entire journey.
To fight climate change, you basically need new technologies, new ways of transportation, and advanced manufacturing techniques. So how have you covered all these aspects in your book? My question is to Kaviraj Singh.
Thank you, sir. So when we say climate change, it's very basic science. It simply means that we are pumping extra CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So if we need to control the global warming, we need to look for the options and solutions where we are reducing, discounting, or limiting this extra pump of CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, what are the choices we have? The first choice, we switch to renewable, because if we are using the renewable energy, which simply means hydropower, geothermal, solar energy, wind energy, means we are not dependent on the coal-based power generation. As a country, even today, we have about 65% power generation coming from the fossil fuel. So, and it's not just as a country like India, thinking in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it's also taking out the dependence from fossil fuel. It's anyway good for the economy. And the second choice we have, use latest technology, which you are also trying to understand in terms of energy efficiency. And third, we try and use the solution alternative means. And one of such alternative means is carbon offset. And carbon offset simply means that if I'm not able to discount my greenhouse gas emissions, I am incentivizing or providing access to capital or helping someone with the latest technology so that someone on my behalf is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. And this is where the concept of carbon offset came in. First, it was under the Kyoto framework, and then Kyoto expired in 2012. Now the world is moving into Paris Agreement, and our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has also agreed and taken the NDC targets under Paris Agreement. Hopefully, we are expecting towards the end of this year, we would have certain projects happening under Paris Agreement. So the book, in a way, summarize what are the alternatives if the world is moving from fossil-based economy to a renewable-based economy, essentially mean making this world better than what we had yesterday.
Yeah, now India started focusing on the issue of climate change after Modi ji came to power in a big way, in a rather big way. They started after 2014. So, how do you see the role that Prime Minister Modi has on a personal level played in raising awareness about climate change and making the country move towards renewable sources of energy? Question for Tuhin ji.
Well, there are two different ways. On an international scale, Prime Minister Modi ji has been quick to cobble up alliances like the Global Solar Power Alliance, with France as a key partner, the Global Biofuel Alliance, which was initiated during the G20 summit. And all of these are making climate change a mass movement, especially in the third world countries. On another level, when it comes to electromobility, I don't think any prime minister has done more to incentivize electromobility in the country. Today, if you see, almost every important automobile manufacturer has an electrical vehicle variant, and the electrical variant sales are going up. Obviously, the housing societies also need to do more to create infrastructure for EV charging, because that is when the demand for electrical vehicles will get optimized. We have made a quick foray into the hydrogen energy sector. So all of these things have played a very pivotal role. Like I said, Prime Minister has focused on two very clear paths. One is the international narrative building around climate change, the need for India to take the lead, and India has taken the lead globally when it comes to climate change. The second is obviously, creating business sense out of our transition into electrical energy, business sense into a transition into renewable energy within the country. And that is why renewable energy today is the espousal of renewable energy is being taken up on a mass scale. There are simple programs like Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar, Prime Minister's, there is a scheme around solar energy, Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Surya Bijli Yojana. So this incentivizes production of solar energy by every household. You harvest it on your rooftop, and then you consume it while you also sell the remaining part to the government. So it makes the espousal, the production of solar energy, the espousal of solar energy, and the consumption of solar energy a very democratic process where the consumer is itself. He himself is the producer as well as the consumer, as well as the seller for other people. So I think these are very innovative programs which are bringing in a silent revolution when it comes to our espousal of renewable energy, and the difference will be very visible in the years to come.
In the last 10 years, India had made a huge progress, not just in renewable energy plants like solar energy, wind, but also in infrastructure development. Some of the largest infrastructure projects, highways, expressways, have been done in India. And we have, Prime Minister has set the net zero emission target for 2070. At the same time, we are also working towards the Viksit Bharat target of 2047. So industrialization and plus our push for renewable energy is going side by side. So how do we reconcile the interests of the both sides? Kaviraj, I think you have discussed this aspect in your book also. So you can
Yes.
provide your perspective.
So I mean, it's a sort of funny thing that we are coming from the history or the culture background where recycling was part of our culture being Indian. Whether you talk about our ancient, books or everything, you will realize. I just give you a very simple example. Even today in our culture, we have leaves as the plates. We don't use plastic if you still go to the villages. So um, protection of nature and conservation is part of the Indian heritage. It's there in our blood. But because of industrialization and dependence on the fossil fuels and development, somehow these things were left behind. But I would rather say during last 10 years, the focus of the government is shifting to the roots where we have inherited all these things. So I give you some of the anecdotes just to answer your question. The use of ethanol. So it's very much part of our energy sector now because the current government has made it accessible to the supply chain of the oil companies that, okay, if the ethanol is available in the country, it can very well be mixed with the petrol which we import. Use of electric vehicles. There are heavily subsidized industry which is being built in the country and competing with the big players at the international level. Third point is biomass-based power generation. So there are quite a few plans. Even we as a company are engaging with certain, companies which are collecting the biomass and generating power out of it. Even the waste to power generation, technologies and industries, it's also evolving in our country. Solar rooftop. This is another area which is one of the key focus of the government and solar-based power generation. At present, we have almost 100 gigawatt solar up and running, which is huge, and India is leading at the international level in terms of the solar-based power generation penetration to the grid. You talked about the infrastructure. So right now there are different initiatives, not one, but many, where the fly ash is being utilized for road construction, plastic is being utilized for road construction, waste, different categories of the waste are being utilized for road construction. So we call it a circular economy, that nothing is waste. Waste coming from one sector is a resource for another sector. So I think India is at the right path, especially when we have a target to be a net zero country by 2070 and a country with almost 1.5, 1.4 billion population. It's not a simple target to achieve, but with the roadmap which we have by the policymakers and the government right now, I think we will be achieving that target, not compromising the growth perspective, because the best way to deal with global warming, you stop doing what you are doing, you stop consuming energy, but that's not the choice we have. There are people in our country which still need the basic infrastructure because we are a developing economy. So I think we are on the right track, and hopefully with the vision we have under the Paris Agreement by the current government, we will be achieving. And another thing probably I can share here. India is one of those very few countries in the world which have either achieved or very close to achieve the Paris Agreement target. So that's also something we all should be proud of.
Now, the issue of climate change, it needs global cooperation. President Trump is not so enthusiastic about the Paris Agreement. He has given some indications that America might even pull out of that agreement. So, and other countries also have their own agenda. For instance, China is not fulfilling all the mandates of the Paris Agreement. So, how does India find cooperation in the present global geopolitical ecosystem to get the climate change agenda forward? Tuhinji.
Well, it's an opportunity for India. When two of the greatest world powers, US and China, are skeptical of the Paris Agreement, are skeptical of their climate commitments, it gives an opportunity for India to manifest its climate leadership. The point is, Paris Agreement, obviously, when the world converges to arrive on certain things, to go back on it after 8 or 9 years, takes the whole climate movement behind by that many years. But like I said, we can't do much about it because President Trump is very firm with with the way he thinks, with his policies. India has to find a way out where India retains its commitment and inspires a whole lot of other countries. And I think India will find support. There are some excellent, India has some excellent understanding with countries like France, where Prime Minister Modi is today. India will find support from some of the emerging world powers. India will find support from other like-minded countries. So I think it's an opportunity for India going ahead.
There are a large number of renewable energy sources that are becoming popular in India: solar, wind, biofuels, green hydrogen, green ammonia. The issue is that we have the technology for all this, but we don't have the manufacturing capacity. So much of the equipment for the solar, for instance, about 97% of the equipment, I'm told, is coming from outside. So what can we do to improve the situation so that the manufacturing actually happens in India?
Well, the PLI schemes have been, the PLI schemes have played a crucial part in actually improving the production capacity for non-renewable sources within the country. But like you mentioned, the figures still, tell you a different story. So a lot more needs to be done, and over a period of time, that will happen, because it not happening will make the entire exercise economically not viable. So for India to be a leading player in the energy sector, in the renewable energy sector, India will have to invest more in manufacturing equipments, that manufacture renewable energy. So I think it's a matter of time. It's work in progress, and it will happen over a period of time.
The cities are thought to be the main contributors of climate change. How can smart cities help in reducing urban carbon emissions and fight climate change? Kaviraj ji.
I think this is where the focus should be right now, because we are growing in terms of infrastructure, we are growing in terms of economy, and if the growth continues, we would have even bigger cities and new cities, sort of smart cities. So when we say smart cities, means the city is self-sustainable, and the infrastructure is such that there is no chaos. Like historically, we have so much of the problems in our existing cities, whether it's pollution, waste management, roads and construction and everything. So in order to make a city self-sustainable, the first thing is the policies. What kind of vision a government and policymakers has? And the second, do we have that much of a money to build that kind of a city? And third, so many things around it. Do we have a proper energy access? Do we have proper waste management? Do we have water supplies? So it's not something we can achieve in a day, in a year. It's a long-term planning. And I mean, historically, we have been failing on, to reach to a level where we can plan for next 20 years or 30 years. There are just a couple of cities in our country where we could have, or rather we planned better. For example, Chandigarh, we say that it's a better planned city than any other cities. So smart city simply means that the policymakers should have a vision for next 20 years. They should estimate the number of people living in that city. They should estimate very well that how many cars will be driving, people will be driving, how many roads we need and infrastructure. So it's a time-taking process, and this should be the focus for the policymakers now.
Now, advanced countries are the world's biggest polluters. It is their industries, their consumerist lifestyle that is responsible for the problem of climate change that we are facing today. So, and India is called upon to make a large amount of sacrifice, set up renewable energy centers. America has not promised that they will be net zero by 2070, but we are making that promise. So, shouldn't the advanced countries pay for this, the problem that they have created? Tuhin ji?
Well, absolutely. These are areas which are still, being worked out in different climate summits. And one of the reasons why we have not been able to make much headway is because of the extremely, non-flexible stand of important countries like the US and China. But going ahead, it's very important for all countries to get together to sort out issues of climate finance, because like you mentioned, like if bigger countries don't make a bigger pie of contribution, then obviously the pressure is unnecessarily much higher upon the third world countries and the emerging and the growing countries. But these are issues which the world has been grappling with for a very long time. Unfortunately, no clear solution has emerged. In fact, these issues have been mentioned in the book, but like I said, it requires political willpower at the highest level in US and China to make a success out of the climate action movement. to bring all countries at the same level. Till then, obviously, like I said, every crisis provides an opportunity, and India has a great opportunity to set the narrative when it comes to climate action, which India has been successfully doing under Prime Minister Modi.
Kaviraj, your company, Earthood Services Private Limited, is working in the area of carbon offset audits. So, can you tell us about how does system of this carbon trading, carbon credits work on a global scale, and how does it benefit India?
Okay. So when we say carbon offset in simple terms, if as a person or entity or a corporate, I'm not able to reduce my GHG emissions, I'm financing someone else to do the job on my behalf. It may sound a bit fancy, but in real terms, it works pretty well. So there are two categories of the carbon market. One is voluntary and second one is regulatory. When I say voluntary means if I'm saying, it's getting into the mainstream now, people are saying this coffee is carbon neutral, this flight is carbon neutral, this fabric is carbon neutral. So it's a voluntary choice I'm making. And the regulatory means there are obligations and mandate by the government to cut down GHG emissions on the industries. And if I'm doing that, then it's a regulatory carbon market. Now I give you the examples of both. When we say regulatory carbon offset market, it used to be Kyoto Framework. Name of the market was CDM, Clean Development Mechanism. And then Kyoto expired. We are into Paris Agreement. Article 6.4 of Paris Agreement is a market-based mechanism. Essentially mean there'll be companies, there'll be countries trading emissions. So Article 6.2 and 6.4 provide you the option the two countries can trade among themselves, like governments can trade. For example, we are involved in quite a few projects where Switzerland is buying the carbon offset from Ghana, Nigeria, or Malawi. So it simply means the government of Switzerland is investing into the projects where the emission reduction is happening. And our job as a third party is to validate and verify such projects. Once these projects are approved, the credit are issued, and the host country will utilize these credits to meet their NDC targets. Similarly, the regulatory market puts the obligations in pretty much all the countries. You talked about the US moving out from Paris Agreement. So essentially, there are just three countries in the world, US, Iran, and Yemen, which is not part of the Paris Agreement. Every other country is a part of Paris Agreement. And one of the key criteria to meet the obligations is you have the option to use carbon offset. So Kyoto Framework gives you this option, and Government of India has already identified 13 different sectors, hard to abate sectors, where people can generate carbon credits and can export these carbon credits to the countries and industries which require them. Our job within the framework is doing the audits, means certifying those potential carbon offset projects and then sending them to programs and registries. If it's a regulatory market, normally United Nations or the host countries are the regulators. If it's a voluntary market, then where our gold standard, there are different registries. And the last point, Government of India is also launching its own domestic regulatory market, because within the regulatory, there are international markets and national markets. And hopefully, towards the end of this year, we would have even the Indian cap and trade market up and running. Bureau of Energy Efficiency is the body which is regulating and managing this market in the country.
India is still primarily an agricultural country. Much of our economy is running on agriculture, and bulk of the young population is employed in the agriculture sector. And about 50% of the country is still living in villages or small towns. Large scale urbanization is taking place, but it will take some time for people to move there. So, how does the climate change, the issue of climate change, impact these people? The people who are living in rural areas and in the small towns, and the way we are fighting, trying to tackle with this problem. What kind of, efforts will have to be made in these areas to India?
Rural pollution has been very different from urban pollution. Urban pollution primarily emanates from industries, from gases emitted by different production capacities and all that. But
For
rural
instance, I
population,
had read one statistics. In Australia, the biggest pollution methane gas emissions is coming from the cows. So the large herd of cows. So we too have that kind of population. We have a cattle population also. So that might also be, taken into account.
Well, since not much work has been done in that sector, I think methane gas from cows is something which I have personally not heard much, or at least in India, we don't have a quantified research on that. But the other source of pollution in rural areas was the smoke emanating from chulhas, which has been done away completely in the last 10 years because of the Ujjwala scheme, which provides gas connections to everybody. Organic farming is one of the ways where we can attempt, or we can move towards clean agriculture. But like I said, the focus has primarily so far been on urban centers, because the pollution in urban centers are very visible, they're quantifiable. Maybe if in rural centers we have PM 2.5 measurements across the country, maybe that is the time when we would become more aware of the problem of pollution in rural areas. But when it comes to farm fires, stubble burning, I think those, for the time being, are primary culprits when it comes to pollution in rural areas. And on the eve of Diwali, they call it the Parli season, when the entire North India, the rural parts of it, are replete with stubble burning. That leads to pollution not just in the local area, but across the entire northern belt of the country. That is a problem which we have to deal, which we hopefully will deal with now, because we had hoped that two state governments of the Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi and Punjab would somehow cooperate between themselves and sort out the problem. But yes, in the time to come, that solution will be found out, and Parli burning, or stubble burning, which is one of the causes of primary causes of pollution in across North India, will be handled in the next 1 year effectively.
Mhm. So, can you tell me in short, what is the primary aim of your writing the book? What kind of influence you expect that book should have?
The question is to me.
Yes. And
Well,
after to Kaviraj also.
there are two. The book has two broad layers. The book has two broad layers. One is the macro perspective. The macro perspective of how India is rising to the climate action challenge, what India as a country is doing, which is where I have primarily contributed. And the second part is the micro level aspects, which include the concept of carbon credit, carbon offset trade, which includes a lot of decisive action happening in different spheres, whether it is electromobility, the need for policy change in those areas. So these two layers make it a comprehensive, one of its kind book on climate action. And like we have written in the book, we need to democratize conversations around climate action. They need not be limited to the Paris summit or the COP, different COP summits. They need to percolate down to the masses, to the younger crowd studying in colleges, schools and colleges, so that somewhere it inspires more children, more people from the younger generation to come out and contribute to the climate movement, and maybe, explore careers in climate action.
Same question to you, Kaviraj. What kind of impact
Okay.
do you expect the book to have?
Right. So I think one of your question was related to who is responsible for climate change, and without any debate, it's mainly the developed world because they have been doing it historically. Now, the question is who is impacted by the climate change? So obviously, the people who belongs to developing economies, people who do not have access or that much of infrastructure or money so that they can survive the impacts of climate change. These are the people living in the developing economies. So that's one point. And second point, it's one of the biggest threat ever faced by humans, which is global warming. So, and we do not have any other planet to live with, just one planet, Mother Earth, we have. So now the idea behind the book was that let's write something with the perception or the ideology that if someone is reading this book, they have the awareness what is global warming and what the world is doing about it. And here comes the Indian leadership role, because as a country, like I said in the beginning, culturally, we have so much in our culture that that leads to conservation, protection, nature awareness, and so many things, but somehow that has been not part of the mainstream of late. So the idea was to summarize everything together so that the young generation is also aware that there is a phenomena which is global warming happening and there is a need to do something about it. There are very smaller things which one can do and contribute in the fight against climate change.
Thank you for this interesting conversation, and I wish you best for the book and the valiant fight against climate change that is being waged in India. I hope it is successful, even though the target is very difficult to achieve, because the way the world is progressing, even the digital technologies, they need a lot of power. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.